Let's start with a question. Why do so many African Americans today know so little about their Kemetic or ancient Egyptian roots? Kemet, the ancient name for Egypt, means the Black Land. It's a civilization that gave the world papyrus, the rudimentary ancestor of paper, and the obelisk, which inspired everything from Washington, D.C.'s monuments to European cathedrals. But here's the twist: the further you dig, the more you'll find that for centuries, stories of Kemet were deliberately distorted, painted as dark, superstitious, even evil. Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone want to rewrite such a rich history? We're about to unravel that. This episode will trace how colonizers twisted the narrative and why reclaiming Kemetic heritage isn't just about pride, it's about truth and empowerment. Have you ever heard someone reduce Egyptian heritage to nothing more than mummies and curses? That's colonial propaganda in action. Colonizers, especially during the 19th century scramble for Africa, wielded two powerful tools: ethnocentrism, the belief that their culture was superior, and revisionism, rewriting history to fit their agenda. They depicted Kemetic religion as pagan and its people as primitive. Why? Because by demonizing the past, they justified their mission to civilize and control. Now, imagine being told your ancestors worshipped animal gods and practiced dark magic. That emotional sting, that's the conflict colonizers wanted to ignite. But the truth? Kemet was a beacon of science and spirituality, not superstition. Let me tell you about Ma'at, a central Kemetic principle meaning balance and truth, much like the modern idea of justice. Colonial narratives twisted Ma'at, branding it as mere superstition or even sorcery. You might ask, how does a philosophy of balance become evil? Through terms like idolatry and black magic, used by colonial writers to otherize African beliefs. Here's where it gets technical. By weaponizing semiotics, the study of symbols, colonizers redefined Kemetic iconography as sinister, ignoring its deeper meanings. This reframing didn't just distort the past, it fractured the spiritual self-image of millions of descendants. Picture of Pharaoh. Hollywood gives us pale faces and European features, but the reality? Ancient Egyptian dynasties were African, with Nubian and Kushite ancestry. Through the lens of physiognomy, judging character from facial features, colonial archaeologists erased Black identities from Egyptian royalty. Black pharaohs didn't exist, textbooks insisted. This lie stuck, shaping how generations of African Americans saw themselves. I once met a teacher who told her students, Egyptians weren't black. The disbelief in the room was palpable, but the evidence art, DNA, artifacts, speaks for itself. Kemet was part of Africa, full stop. Ever notice how words like voodoo and witchcraft were used to lump all African spiritual systems together as evil? That's linguistic bias in action. Colonizers deployed ethnolinguistics, the study of language and culture, to manipulate perception. By labeling Kemetic rituals as dark, they planted seeds of shame. Now you might be thinking, it's just semantics, right? But these terms influence self-worth and cultural memory. If you hear your ancestors' beliefs described as evil for long enough, it seeps into your worldview. Today, reclaiming language is the first step toward reclaiming dignity and heritage. What happens when a people are told for centuries that their heritage is wicked? They begin to believe it. That's internalized racism, a psychological trap. I once spoke with a friend whose grandmother forbade her from studying Egyptian history, calling it the devil's work. That's generational trauma in action. Colonizers used cognitive dissonance, forcing people to hold conflicting ideas to sever descendants from their roots. But here's the resolve. Many are now breaking the chain, seeking their Kemetic origins and healing old wounds. The journey is tough, but empowerment is possible when truth replaces shame. Why does every museum seem to show Egyptian statues with noses mysteriously broken off? It's not just erosion, it's erasure. Eurocentric historians practice cultural appropriation, claiming Egypt's achievements for Europe and iconoclasm, the literal defacing of African features. They wrote revisionist textbooks, cast white actors as pharaohs, and erase blackness from global consciousness. Now, you might wonder, didn't anyone speak up? The few who did were dismissed as radicals or dreamers. But the digital age is changing that truth can't stay buried forever. Let's address the elephant in the room, how Christianity, introduced by colonizers, was used to replace and demonize Kemetic spirituality. Missionaries called Kemetic deities false gods and their temples dens of sin. This is religious syncretism, but with a twist, one faith forced over another. The result? African Americans descended from Kemet were told to abandon their heritage or risk damnation. I've met elders who shy away from their roots, fearing ancestral customs will invite evil. That's not coincidence, that's centuries of indoctrination. But a new generation is starting to reconnect, asking, what were we before we were told to forget? Raise your hand if you learned more about Greek gods than African civilizations in school. That's the curriculum gap at work. Schools promoted pseudo-archaeology, misusing artifacts to support racist theories, and selective history, leaving out African brilliance. Now, you might ask, does this really matter? Absolutely. Education shapes identity. When all you see are negative stereotypes, you start to question your worth. I recall a history class where the only mention of Africa was slavery, not the pyramids or the Library of Alexandria. We must demand a curriculum that honors the truth, not colonial fiction. Here's some hope. There's a renaissance happening. Afrocentric historians are piecing together the Kemetic puzzle, one artifact at a time. They're applying two powerful tools, decolonization, the process of reclaiming stolen narratives, and cultural revitalization, bringing lost traditions back to life. Social media, documentaries, and grassroots movements are changing the game, spreading truth faster than old lies can travel. Now, you might be skeptical. Can we really undo centuries of erasure? I say yes with persistence and pride. Each reclaimed story is a seed for future generations to grow stronger roots. Let me tell you a story. A young woman named Amara traced her lineage and discovered her great-great-grandmother was a priestess in a Kemetic tradition. She dove into hieroglyphics, an ancient writing system, combining logograms and phonetics, and learned to read the names her family had forgotten. At first, Amara faced ridicule. Why dig up dead gods? Some sneered. But curiosity became confidence as she realized her heritage was regal, not shameful. Her journey from confusion to pride mirrors what many descendants of Kemet are experiencing today. The more we reclaim, the clearer our reflection in history's mirror becomes. So, where do we go from here? Reclaiming Kemetic history isn't just about correcting the record, it's about rebuilding regal legacies. With digital archives and DNA genealogy, like autosomal testing descendants, are piecing together their lost stories. The conflict, old stereotypes, die hard, but the resolve is growing every day as more people embrace their true origins. Now, I challenge you. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you help shatter old myths and shine light on hidden truths? Kemet's legacy, once painted as evil, is being reborn as a wellspring of pride, wisdom, and power if we dare to reclaim it.